Hello, happy Wednesday. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. This is a podcast for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are, which is such a beautiful discovery process. And we need other people to step in as guides, mentors, and supports to validate the things we feel and the things we long to do, be, and feel. I wanted to let you know that the Stand, Speak, Shine School, Stand, Speak, Shine, I say it so fast, some people are like, what are you talking about? Is filling up. This week the next couple of weeks actually will be really pivotal for how many people that I have a cap on the amount of people that I can bring into the space. And it is launching January 6th, 2020. So check that out, standspeakshine.com. 3-month self-actualization program for women launching January 6th, called the Stand, Speak, Shine School. And if you love this podcast and you love some of the principles that we hash over, especially those about feminine embodiment and the lost feminine arts, having radiant, abundant health, relationships, and possible profitability for saying yes to your soul path and walking into a mission, a career, or a project that could potentially be profitable for you and also serve the greater humanity. That is what the Stand, Speak, Shine School is all about. So check us out. I want to introduce to you Tracy Litt. She and I met at Iconic in Phoenix last month with Allie Brown. And let me just tell you, we instantly connected. I heard her speak from the microphone as just a participant, just an audience member like me, but I knew she had a lot of just personal power. She speaks out, she uses her voice, she's very unapologetic with her presence. And she and I had lunch together one day and just talked, became Insta friends. She lives all the way over in Florida, but we know that we're going to be collaborating on some future projects, especially for developing teens, young adult women, and those who are sort of in that transitory space in their life where they're trying to figure out who they are, bringing mothers into that space as well. So she and I both have this passion about, I guess you could say, like, the worthiness thing is what we ended up talking about, which is so funny because that's the name of her book, Worthy Human, and all about taking accountability for your own sense of worthiness and self. I really enjoyed reading her book that she mailed to me along with a t-shirt. But let me just tell you a little bit about her. I think it's so funny because she says if Brene Brown and Tony Robbins had a baby, she'd be that baby. I can totally see that. She's direct. She gets straight to the heart of what's real, what's true. She tells it like it is, very masterfully, while also being that skilled, kind of empathetic, loving, and supportive person. She's also about empowering, unraveling the beliefs you have about yourself and cultivating a phenomenal relationship with yourself. Not just a get-by relationship, not just a placating one, not just a trumped up, oh, you're so awesome one, but an actual phenomenal relationship with yourself. And when you have that, I'm starting to learn this very powerfully. When you have that phenomenal relationship with yourself, every single thing that you seek, you will find. You can have and access this inner power to create, feel, or be anything and everything that you desire. And you will not fall out of balance, because I think that's kind of the fear we have, is if we get everything we have, everything around us is going to fall apart. And women just need to let go of that belief. So let's hear from Tracy. Tracy, so happy to have you on here. I already feel so excited because you and I had this whole conversation about all the drama happening in my life. So it's like therapy for me.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And your book, Worthy Human. So I know whenever anyone's teaching about something and they are an expert, as you are, I mentioned in this in the intro, but you have a lot of personal power that I was drawn into. Just pick your brain, and I'm glad we had that time together at Iconic to connect at lunch and get to know each other better and forge a connection. But anytime I see someone teaching on a subject, I'm like, oh my heavens to Betsy, what have they walked through to bring them into the space where they're now teaching? So can we go there? Can we talk about what brought you through? What were your storms? What stands out that you could share with us that rendered you this expert in worthiness? Because I love it.
Thank you so much. So let's see. I always love this question because I don't know how far back to go. Like, I was born, right, May 15th, 1977 in Brooklyn. But really, for me, it was realizing where my life was and how I wasn't happy with where it was.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the reality I was in and going, whoa, this isn't really the reality that I want to be experiencing. And what's going on inside of me that's creating this? What's happening with my own worth or real lack thereof at the time before I, did all of the work on myself. And I'm now standing in the position that I'm in now. It started when I was really young and uncovering my own comparisons to my sibling and feeling really not enough and feeling really not smart enough. And that theme kind of carried over. I believe that we all lie somewhere on the spectrum of not feeling enough. It's like the greatest lie of our lives is the lie of unworthiness.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens to all of us because things happen in life and then we carry it with us because we automatically think, well, if I mattered, if I was more significant, if I was more enough, if I was worthy, then that person wouldn't have left me, or I wouldn't have been ignored here, or I would have been loved, or. So it started when I was young and really understanding the journey of, okay, I don't actually think I'm enough. I don't actually think I'm smart enough. And then how that started showing up in my adult life. In terms of my triumphs, my mother was a spiritual counselor, which gave me so much understanding of the work that I do. And unfortunately, I lost her when she was 51 and I was 24. And that was like a massive moment of what am I going to do with, like, she was my best friend. What am I going to do with myself? I can really kind of allow this circumstance to affect my trajectory negatively, or I can take something from this and use more of my power of choice to move forward. I can look at this as, how do I live more? How do I step more into my passion and ensure that I do something with this magnificent life as a result of her not having hers? And then that was interesting about that is, so I lost her when I was 24, and then I had my daughter when I was 27. And then my relationship ended with her father when I was still 27 because she was 8 months old. And that's one of those moments where you're like, yeah, this is not my plan. Like, this was not the intention. But what I realized in retrospect was she was such a gift because I missed my mother so much that I created a mother-daughter relationship in the reverse in having her, which was really, really interesting. But there was a night, this was a really relevant night, which I'm sure everyone who's hanging out with us can resonate with. My daughter was 8 months old. She was crying her eyes out like many babies do, not wanting to go to sleep. I was in one of those, I cannot listen to the monitor anymore. And I'm going to lose my mind. So I went into the garage where I couldn't hear her or the monitor. And I just dropped to the floor and cried, snot bubble, fetal position, cried my eyes out. And had that moment where I went, okay, whatever was going on inside of you created this situation, because also to hang out with me is to know you're the root cause of everything you experience. And we need to be able to dig in and do that work. But I also realized I have a choice here. I can, again, take the circumstance and allow it to affect my trajectory, or I can access my power of choice and decide what kind of life do I want to create for myself and for this gorgeous little girl, and go do that. And that was another kind of shift, another accessing the power of choice point, but another spot where I realized where I wasn't honoring my worth and a new choice I could make that would honor my worth.
Right. Right. And those moments in time where you're just at this junction where I don't even like the word rock bottom, because I think we have a lot of rock bottoms in our lives. It's not just one thing, but usually we can trace it back to an event where we are not showing up in the way that our heart desires we show up. We know something's off. We know that we're off kilter. We're not in alignment. We're out of authenticity, whatever that might be. So motherhood takes you there, right? There's a depth to it. There's a longing to show up in a certain way for a child. And it's okay, for whatever reason, it's okay as mothers that we don't do that for ourselves, but heaven forbid we don't show up that way for a child. So I think you and I have come to the same conclusion that women are more well, it's the biggest challenge of our lives is to show up that way for ourselves and make it like why the true awakening is why, yeah, I did have to turn off the baby monitor. And I feel so alone in this and so guilty about that. I can't go be that mother for her right now. But ultimately, we have to be the mother for ourselves. How did that morph into your work? Like getting that it was about that? Because that is your work now. And I think it's so powerful that you just got that it was all about your own relationship to yourself.
Oh, yes, it is. It is everything. And actually, that's one of the biggest things to your point that I get to do with women, and where we go so wrong is we compromise ourselves and we censor ourselves and we put ourselves last and we rub ourselves down in guilt and we live a life of shoulds. And it's terrible. It's terrible. And it's wildly unnecessary. So for me, it wasn't that was a direct correlation of that moment with her, but it was just more me realizing everything is coming out of me. And if I don't take a good, hard look at how I see myself and whether or not I'm honoring myself and the choices that I'm making, all in relationship to what it means to actually really love yourself, just love yourself. What does that mean? How do you do it? How do I access that? Which is part of what drives my work too, because I love to really make sure we understand what that means. It was me deciding to start to peel back the layers of what is my relationship with myself? Where am I not honoring my worth? Where do I not believe in myself? And it's not an easy question to answer, but it's really, really necessary. And it's where you're going to get your most profound growth when you're willing to be honest with yourself. Like the kind of honesty that kind of makes you a little nauseous because we're so masterful at bullshitting ourselves.
Yes, we are.
And believing our own lies. Right? Like we are masters at it. So ultimately, any area of your life that you're not currently a 10 or satisfied or satiated in, doing the work of yourself is the way to get there. Figuring out what's going on in your relationship with yourself and starting to also see it as a relationship with yourself, because we're also so trained to see relationship as another external human outside of us. And that's not it. Your relationship with you is the number one relationship you'll have in your entire life. And I say that now with 3 kids and a husband I love and amazing friends and family and a beautiful community. I'm the most important thing.
Right. And how did you get to that space where you're just like, that's it, I'm choosing me?
Because that's how you actually love yourself and honor your worth. Right? It's if you are doing for everyone else and putting everyone else first, you're actually compromising yourself. That's a form of self-betrayal.
Yes.
Right? When you aren't accepting yourself, when you're living in self-judgment, where you're resentful and you're depleted and you're exhausted and you're speaking to yourself in just disgusting, demeaning ways that you wouldn't speak to anybody else, when you're not moving your body and you're not using your voice and you're not taking care of yourself and you're not setting boundaries and you're not paying attention to the way you think, that's self-betrayal.
Right. So,
right.
What I hear, and I'm sure you hear this too, is a lot of people cannot drum up the wherewithal, or because they've come into a space of apathy, like everything I've tried doesn't work. I've done affirmations. I've gone to trainings. I've read books. I think intellectually and logically, people know that they should be putting themselves first. And they know that that is probably a necessary next step for them in terms of, receiving the desires of their hearts and really being authentic to who they are. So what would you say is sort of like this maybe pivotal piece we're missing to get started on that track? Like, did you have to go through something really hard and then go, oh my gosh, maybe I got to choose me. Maybe that's it. Or what is the point, I guess, of awakening to not the niceness of that, or not the like, I want that, but I need that. I need to do that. How do we take out that apathy around it and really like, boom, this is really a needful thing?
Well, I hope that you listen to this and you do it by choice. If not, the universe will make you do it by catalyst. And what I mean by that is you will get ill. You will get a disease. Someone will die. You will get a divorce. You will lose a job, right? The universe will wake you up if you don't choose to wake up first. So you can change by choice or you can change by catalyst. And I truly hope for everybody that you do it by choice because it's a lot more pleasurable.
Well, that's maybe
right?
maybe that's enough motivation to go, enough drama. Like, universe, I don't need any more messages.
Right. Well, but that's the thing about the universe is that if you don't heed what's being given to you, it's going to get louder and more painful until you wake up.
The volume will
Period.
ramp up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the volume, the pain, the type of situation it is, the extremity, something will give because you're not paying attention to yourself, to the lessons you need to learn, to the shifts that you get to make. And that's when you can start to dive in and do the work. Or to your point, listening to this conversation might go, oh, okay, I don't want to be smacked over the head by a 2x4. I'm just going to start to make shifts based on the areas of my life where I don't feel happy. Mm-hmm. What we're ultimately looking for is how do you spend the hours of your day feeling? Are you stressed and overwhelmed and low and resentful and bored and negative and Groundhog's Day and, well, this is just life? Or are you joy-filled and radiant and satiated and compassionate and positive and upbeat and playful?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even me just giving a random laundry list drops you into the two different types of people I just described.
Right. And that feeling of, hey, if everything on I'm who I am and what I'm worth must be, if I'm looking at all of the evidence around me of what's not working and how I feel, that must mean, that there's something fundamentally wrong with me, that I am not feeling the way I want to feel. And that in and of itself is a choice, right? Like, what do you want to feel and how do you feel more of it?
Yes. Yes, everything's a choice. The whole foundation of my work in the world is power of choice, right? Power of choice and owning your worth and learning how to think in congruence with what it is you say you want and how you want to feel. These are all superpowers that we all have. It's not like half of you have it and half of you don't. This is the human technology. This is what you have access to. We just really, quite frankly, were never taught it. We were brought up in a world where we had to earn our value and where you had to be productive, where you are what you did and what you possessed, right? Women were brought up in a world where, oh, don't show your emotions, shove it down. Hide in the closet if you want to cry, but make sure your makeup still looks good and you have food on the table. Like these, and conversely for men, don't show your emotion. Vulnerability is bad. You've got to be strong. Support a family. Like these very limited collective thinking beliefs and constructs and worldviews that are now showing up in 2020 as anxiety and depression and low self-esteem and conflict, just to name a few.
Yeah, I interviewed Dr. Jaffa Vernon Frank, and she talked about how these things are showing up in the collective unconscious, sort of that Carl Jung spiritual psychology, and Freud talked about it too, but it's like there's a field, and it's a field of generated energy from the experiences and the beliefs of the collective humanity. And I think there's subgroups of that too, like certain religions can have their own field and certain family structures can have their own field. But by and large, women have been handed these ideologies of sacrifice everything for those around you, putting yourself first is selfish. If you burn yourself out and wear yourself out in the service of others, you'll be more spiritual. You'll get your crown in heaven. There's just so many of these false, quite frankly, double-edged sword standard type of messages.
Yeah.
That's creating the anxiety. And these girls of today are like, I don't think so.
Yes. Well, thank God. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, everything that you just went through, it's like, even when you just listen, right? You listen to the statements you just made in the laundry list of the different worldviews that we were all influenced by, right? I call it the drip process in my book. Like what was dripped into you, which created who you are now. If you listen to that, we no longer have to wonder why. Why is it so hard for you to make time for yourself and put yourself first? Why is it so hard for you to invest in yourself? What makes it so hard for you to say no and set a boundary? Hello, look at how you were raised. Look at what you were modeled from the women that you, paid attention to in your life. Because we are always, the reality we live is a direct match for our belief system.
Yes.
Right? So in actual fact, to start to put yourself first and realize that, the main opinion in my life is the one that I have of myself. The most important thing are the words that I say to myself. Boundaries are love, right? Oh, guilt isn't helpful. I don't need to care what people think. It's none of my business. And we start to really shift into the rightful space of personal power, right? And choice and loving yourself. That's when everything shifts. But we have to change the way that we were raised first. You have to take a look at your belief system, because you'll never take action on something that your belief system doesn't support.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So I can't help you love yourself if we don't take a look at, well, what are the current beliefs and worldviews that you hold that stop you from prioritizing yourself?
So
just as an example.
When you talk in your book about energy, like having low energy, and that is a contributing factor to some of the predicaments we get ourselves in. I remember you offered a case study, and I don't remember what page it's on, but this is what I'm experiencing with some of my relationship dynamics and some of the people I mentor and coach, especially in the business arena, is like they'll get really fired up. They'll get super motivated. They'll find some mindset nugget and they'll just glom onto it and go, you know what? I am worth it. Damn it. And I know who I am, and I am a woman of da 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 da, right? Hear me roar. And then life sets in. So for me, it's the management of personal energy that makes or breaks how that motivation is sustained. But under that, even, you're not even going to be motivated unless you value yourself. So for me, the energy comes from the self-value. So if somebody came to you and they're like super low energy and they hired you and they're like, you know what, I logically know all this stuff. I get it. I just cannot I have such low energy and I can't get motivated, or I can't move. Like I get to a point and I scale back, 5 steps forward, 10 steps back. How do you tell them, I guess, to up their energy?
So there's a lot of awesome parts to what you just asked, because we have to understand how change actually works to create anything that's sustainable and long lasting. But before I address that, taking a look at your habits and behaviors, I always say this to my clients: if I became invisible and I sat on your shoulder, but you clearly didn't know because I'm invisible and I'm weightless, what would I observe you doing, speaking, thinking, saying for 3 days? What would I see? That's powerful. That'll change your life. Take this tool. Pretend I'm on your shoulder for 3 days. Who are you being? What are you allowing? What are you tolerating? Where are you hitting snooze? Where are you spinning out in resentment for 2 hours? Where are you wasting 3 hours on social media? Where are you saying you're trying in your business, but you're kind of just faking the funk and not really doing it, but then complaining that you don't have results? Where are you eating ice cream at 9 o'clock at night and not moving your body and then telling me that you feel like shit?
Yeah. Yeah, because
we have to audit ourselves in a way that's really honest.
And I love that that's your thesis, because with your book, Worthy Human, the by title or the byline is because you are the problem and the solution. It's you. Like everything.
Yeah.
It's your energy. It's
yes,
your,
I
it's your
love
thoughts,
it. So
habits, behaviors. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it's so wonderful. At first, a lot of people get upset with me at first because you don't want to be the problem. But after you're done being mad at me, which I'm totally cool with because it's actually like what will change your life. And then you go, okay, fine. So if I'm the problem, I'm the solution. So if I'm the obstacle, then I'm the answer. Ooh, which then drops you into like the largest sense of freedom you could ever experience in your whole life, because now you're not waiting on anything or anyone else to change. Nothing outside of you needs to change or happen for you to feel, be, do, and create differently than you have right now. It is all you, which is like, yes. And I will address this because it's really a mainstay of the work. The only way for you to gladly put your hand up in the air and volunteer and go, I am the problem and I am the solution. The only way to get there is if you back up and you first believe the truth about your worth. You are enough. You always have been. You always will be. Your worth is not negotiable. You do not need to earn your worth. Your worth is your birthright. You are born pure, lovable, significant, enough. You matter, and you are worthy. Period. The reason why that is so important is because in the outdated world we were brought up in of who I am or what I do dictates my value, you'll never own that you're the problem. If you're afraid, it's going to impact your worth and your value. But if you know nothing can influence your worth, now you can make epic life changes because you're not making everything mean something about whether or not you're good enough.
Yes.
Are you with me? Does this make sense?
Oh yeah,
because
honey.
It's kind of the key. When I talk about it, I talk about it so much that sometimes I'm like, am I making sense? Does this even make sense? Because it makes sense to me.
I think because, and I just learned this like pivotal difference between males and females and the way our brains are wired. Literally, our amygdala is so fired up in the fight or flight, got to get things done, got to figure this out and solve it. And we see the big picture and it's so overwhelming. And I think, and men just can stay on one task at a time. They don't typically have the same self-worth issues, at least not to the degree that we do, especially about the relationship part of it, like our children, our friendships, and our communities. So the shadow side of that is that because I can see everything that needs to be done, and I have this whole picture in my head of how I want to feel, do, be, whatever, that anxiety comes in by feeling not up to the task. And I guess that's why I'm saying about personal energy. Like if you have the reserves built up, okay, so let's say you made the choice and you're like, okay, I'm worth it. I have got to put myself first. I believe that's needful. Now what? How do I keep that sustained belief without, because there's so many demands around us.
Well, but that's also where boundaries come into play. And boundaries is one of the ways we actively love ourselves. Boundaries aren't for other people. They're for you. Boundaries are love. That's one of there's lots of ways that we actually honor our worth and love ourselves. And those things are one and the same. Loving yourself and honoring your worth are the same thing. So it's realizing also, and this is what I was going to say about change before, how do you sustain it? It's understanding that change is not something that happens in a day. It's also not something that happens in 21 days, contrary to popular belief. And no, it's not 30 days to change a habit either. It's actually different for every person. On average, you got to go 66 days of consistency for something to start to really develop as a new habit. But the bigger thing to understand is if you are going from someone who never prioritized themselves to someone who now chooses themselves with ease and excitement, your mind and your nervous system is not going to be down with that. Because your entire life, you have treated yourself, you have created a dynamic within yourself where you don't put yourself first. That's what's familiar to you. And when you try to change, essentially, change is making the unfamiliar familiar. And now you're going to go into the unfamiliar land of I'm prioritizing myself. I'm setting up boundaries. This is the new lay of the land. You are going to enter the land of fear, which is actually the thing that stops us from changing, because your nervous system and your mind start to freak out. What is she doing? Why is she doing this? We were fine and alive and familiar, and she put everybody first and it was fine. And now all of a sudden she wants to make all these new choices and all these changes. Because your mind and your body actually do not care if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're having sex, if you're prosperous, if you're in lack, if you're joyful, if you're depressed. Your mind and body don't care. They want you to survive. So we have to understand this is also part of running your mind and mindset and understanding the humanness of yourself and the biology of what goes on when you try to be different than how you've been. Your mind and body are going to buck the system and ultimately do everything they can to get you to stop changing.
Right. Yeah. Because that's okay. If we don't have predictability, if we don't have the files in our brain of past experience of what it's like to self-honor, that's scary as living freak to the body. Because that means you're going to die.
And truly, correct. So mind 101 is, it is solely singular. One job is make sure she wakes up and breathes tomorrow morning. That's it. So once you wake up and take your first breath, your mind literally is like, sweet, winning. Yes, nailed it. Meanwhile, you haven't done a thing for yourself, right? Not even a speck of gratitude. Nothing's gone down. So if you understand that, then you also realize that all that self-doubt, all of the voices in your head that are telling you I shouldn't prioritize myself, or am I really worth it, or I need to put my family first, or can I really do that business, or success is really not for me, and all of that garbage that is in opposition of what you say you want is quite simply just your mind and body trying to stop you from changing. Which then brings me into the next element of my work, which is mindset. Don't believe everything you think. Your thoughts are options. They're not facts.
Right. And that comes back to back up and believe your worth and examining it and going, is this congruent with a self-honoring choice or thought? Or is this making me feel more of what I want to feel?
Yeah. Which is ultimately you choosing yourself. Deciding this is how I want to spend most of my hours of my day feeling, and then aligning into that, because you actually are that powerful. You are that powerful. You can decide how you want to feel and live a life experiencing those emotions.
That's so liberating.
Which actually, isn't it? Because that's the truth. That's
but
what
how do you know? Okay,
all about.
So here comes more of the drip programming around that. Okay, because I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a second.
I love it. Go.
Okay, so who do you think you are, thinking you're all that, and that's so self-aggrandizing? Okay, so that's part of like baby boomer and previous generations, and even my generation X. I think you're a generation X too. We are the children of the baby boomers, who are the children of the supposedly the greatest generation, the Great Depression, our grandparents. So
I love my grandparents.
I do too, but they was not the greatest generation for women. I'll tell you that right now. No,
it wasn't. And I have to say this because we're just having such a good conversation. Let's pause here and highlight. Doesn't it seem insane to you that we are operating with the same belief system, worldviews, constructs, and thought processes of women that were operating in the Great Depression? Hello, it's 2020. Has the world not drastically, the landscape of the world not drastically changed since, what was it, 1925, the Great Depression-ish? Am I guessing that right?
40s, yeah.
1940s, really? Okay, yeah. So I stand corrected. So from the 1940s to 2020, quite frankly, how dare we operate the same way? Nothing else is operating the same way. Technology is completely different. How we interact and communicate is completely different. How we do business is completely different. How corporate America handles and structures their teams is completely different. Everything's completely different, but we're going to operate with the same belief system.
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And I remember like struggling with it because there's some subcultures that it's really, really still being perpetuated, and I cannot take it anymore. I literally can't take it, you know? And to speak to your point of, you know, this is where anxiety is living. This is why we're in this sort of plague of our day, which is overwhelm, anxiety, fear, and all this is because we're buying into those old paradigms that we need to self-abdicate in order to grow. We need to, and sometimes people see, like, I know a lot of my listeners are somewhat religious or on a spiritual path, right? Whatever that looks like for them. Because I attract a lot of women who are like deep truth seekers. It's just like, okay, what is the truth here?
I love it.
What did Christ teach about this? And Christ taught, I mean, there's a part in the New Testament where this dude walks up to Jesus and he's like, hey, just give me the bottom line. Like you're talking a lot of stuff. You're ruffling a lot of feathers with the establishment. Just tell me, give me the bottom line. What is it? How do you, I think his whole thing is like, how do you get to heaven, or like, how do you, whatever, what's the bottom line to this whole life thing? And basically Jesus said, it was about love. He said to love the Lord your God with all your heart. And the second, he's like, this is the greatest commandment, love. The second is like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. And so I don't know how or where, if people really looked at the life of Christ, they would see he put himself first. He did. He went into the wilderness for 40 days. He fueled up. He generated his reserves. Yeah, he was the son of God. Everybody has different beliefs around that. The fact of the matter is the guy was human, and he showed us what we need to do to power up. So this is why he was so wise. This is why he received so much. This is why he was such a perfect teacher in this domain of how do you develop this relationship with self? Because his thing is, if you would develop that with yourself, then you've developed it with God. Instead of feeling so unworthy and so sinful. And I know you're charged around that whole unworthy topic. So let's just go there for a sec, because I really think this is a fundamental piece to why women come in and out of the space of self-honor, because they don't feel worthy. They feel like there's something they're either not doing enough of, or they're doing too much of.
But again, and the origin of that is their belief system. If you were raised to think you have to earn the ability to have your place in this world, you're going to struggle, right? You're not going to believe in your worth. When I say you're enough and you always have been, the voice inside of your head is going to be like, you're right. No, not, you're not going to be able to believe me. You're not going to hear me.
Yeah. And I have to just again, play a little bit of devil's advocate, because in the Christian world, and I'll just use my church, for example, what I constantly felt reinforced around, especially in the women's meeting, was, sisters, what can we do more to be worthy of this blessing we just talked about? What can we do to be more worthy? That is the most pervasive message that I received. It's like, if I want to receive this gift, this promise, this blessing, this opportunity, this whatever, I have to up my worthiness factor. So I can see the value of that, but I also, I can see a little bit where they're going with it.
I actually,
but I'm like,
I have to play devil's advocate here too, because that actually makes my heart sad. It makes my heart sad. I'm sorry. I don't care what religious or creed you are a part of, but how dare you tell anyone they have to be more of something in order to be accepted?
Yeah.
In what world is that even remotely okay? And I happen to be born and raised Jewish. Okay. So I understand Jewish faith, Catholicism, Christianity, the kind of, I'll say subgroups of that, whatever the case might be. How dare anyone tell another human being that they're not enough unless they do X, Y, and Z?
Right.
As if we don't have enough of that. You want to know why body dysmorphia, body image, and all of the craziness going on in the comparison and stuff with our kids, the media, like the whole world wants to tell you how not enough you are. And then in a space that's supposed to have sanctity and support, to turn around and tell you that it's conditional worth, that's crap. And I'm willing to have the argument with anybody because it's just so unfair.
Which is ultimately why I detached from that feeling and what the yuck was for me in that, because I could never, ever measure up to that standard. And I know there's a lot of women sitting in that space listening to our conversation going, well, that's blasphemous. And I'm okay with that. But let me just ask you, if you think that that's blasphemous for us to tell you you don't have to earn your worth, you don't have to earn your standing with God because you exist, let me challenge that person listening to, I would highly challenge you to peel back the layers of your own worth around your relationship with God, because God is always in a space of grace, mercy, love, and compassion. And that is completely unconditional. So if you're feeling alive in your life and you're feeling so generated and you have all this energy, great, keep buying into that paradigm that you have to keep earning your worth. But I will tell most of the young adults that I talk to, because I have kids that are in that, they don't buy it. They're checking out in life. They're not subscribing to that mindset.
Well, thankfully, but the interesting thing is that having a belief system where you have to earn your worth you might think that it's helpful, but it's not. All it does is drive shame. That's all it does. It drives shame, which drives isolation, which is such a painful inner environment to live in and exist in. It drives comparison. It drives inadequacy. It drives low self-esteem. And it doesn't have to be that way, because ultimately what we're talking about is we're having a conversation about belief. All religion is a collection of beliefs believed by a group of people. Boom. So in the spirit of neuroplasticity and mindset, where you can think anything you want and create new thoughts in your head. And ultimately what a belief is a thought that you choose to think over and over and over and over and over again until it is bedded in you. Why not choose to believe something different? Why not choose to say, oh, I listened to this woman. She kind of pissed me off a little, but she woke me up and I'm enough. And I no longer have to pretzel myself or second guess every move I make to be worthy.
It's a mind warp. I love Brene Brown when she says, I will no longer negotiate my worth with you. And
but you will if you believe that you have to earn it.
And if you believe you have to answer to an exterior authority to proclaim your worthiness. I'm just going to add that there too.
Amen.
So how do you quiet? I know we got a few minutes left. I really want to get to a practical part here with, okay, so we talk about examining the beliefs that we carry, perhaps looking at that for 3 days, maybe taking a notebook around and pretending you have that person on your shoulder as a fly on the wall in your life. I love that. So backing up and believing your worth, just owning that, choosing that. We talked about generating reserves of energy through all of those new beliefs and habits that we're generating. So when we're talking about the fear coming up, because I know towards the end of your book, you really talk about how fear can be our friend. We can fall in love with it. Can you speak to that just a little bit? Because I think I think not being afraid of fear and embracing it is a huge piece to all of this.
Yeah, well, it's everything, because fear is actually the underpinning of every block that we have, whether it's fear of rejection, fear of unknown, fear of not being liked, fear of failure, fear of success. It could go on and on. But ultimately, as I was saying before, your mind is wired to make sure you survive. And your mind uses fear like an undercover agent to make sure that you live. Right? So when you are changing, if you're wanting to feel different than you feel now, you want to shift a belief, you want to take different action, you want to start the business, you want to leave the marriage, you want to start the marriage, whatever the thing is that's anything different than who you are right now listening, how you feel right now, or what's familiar to you right now is change, which then means fear is going to show up. And it's biological, and there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, it means there's everything right with you, because when you're feeling and experiencing fear, you're growing and you're healing and you're changing and you're shifting. And that's the real reason why we're here, right? As human and spiritual beings, our purpose is to heal our wounds and grow and learn and expand. Mm-hmm. And when we do those things, all of our perceived problems dissipate. So when it comes to fear, I talk about loving it, because what you resist persists. It's a very popular personal growth cliche, but it's very true. What you resist persists. So if you resist fear, if you try to keep it outside of you, if you try to strong arm it or, overcome it or power through it, it actually exacerbates it and makes it much louder and much more pervasive. Whereas instead, if you see the fear and you feel the fear and you love the fear, as in like grab it, I do this visual when I'm, in a person, put your hand out and grab the fear kind of like it's a little ball across from you and bring it over to you and embrace it, own it, and acknowledge like, hey, fear, I know that you're here making me think all of these anxious, worryful thoughts because you think I'm going to die because I'm changing, but I'm not. I just decided that I want my life to be better. I want to feel better. I want to do different things. And then you've now diffused the fear. You've actually now made fear like, oh, okay, I get why you're here. You're acknowledging it, you're loving it, you're greeting it. And then you can use its power for good. Instead of having it be the thing that sits on the opposite side of the table, keeping you away from all of the glorious things that you want. It is ultimately your responsibility, not your mind's. You are not your mind. Another big tenet of my work. You are not your mind, but it is your responsibility. As the woman listening right now, you are the director. You are the human and spiritual being. It's your responsibility to create the life that you want and the feelings of how you want to feel and whatever reality that you want to have. And when you know where you're going, you can love your fear and use its power to get you there.
Yeah, that could be the fuel right there. I mean, that could just be the catalyst that brings you to the space of, you know what, it's going to be different. I heard something really interesting over the years, and I've been processing it over and over. I think there's a belief that people who are successful don't feel as much fear as people who aren't successful. And actually, they both feel equal amounts of fear. It's how they manage that fear and leverage it for their good and for their goals and their all these things. But I mean, this as a speaker and a writer, and you and I do the same thing, coaching, speaking, writing. We it's not that we don't feel fear. Of course, we feel it, but it doesn't preclude us from showing up. And it's in the showing up and taking a stand for yourself, because I don't do my work for others necessarily. I don't really I know it's not about me is what I'm saying. I got to get out of my own way, but I have to also honor that.
Yeah, absolutely.
These things, and I love what you said about it's your responsibility. You have to separate from the mind body and go into the soul realm and say, okay, soul, I'm listening. And I like the visual you put about holding your hand out. So I have a visual that I use for my soul, and it's a rose. And just because it's my branding, and I have a whole thing with how it shows up for me from the universe. But anyway, so I've actually named my soul Rose. I just like it. So, what I'll do is I'll hold my hand out and wait till I can visualize this most beautiful rose. So it's interesting that you did that same thing with putting your hand out to embrace the fear. We've got to put the fear in with the good, right? It's not like the soul voice is going, don't feel that, don't honor that, don't, it's just it's work with it. Let it fuel you, let it move you. It keeps you from falling asleep is to stay on top of that fear and let it work through you and honor it. Until you get to a real strong trigger issue. I have no fear about speaking in public or any of that stuff, but there's a lot of things I've mastered fear around to a degree. When it comes to my real tender issues that I'm working through, that I maybe didn't even have the conscious awareness that I would get triggered them than I did. That's when that fear becomes so pervasive that it almost eclipses all my tools. And you and I talked about this on the call before we started recording. In that instance, do you have a practical tip when it feels like maybe you just found out that your son has cancer? Maybe you just found out that your daughter got in a car accident, or your best friend's husband cheated on her or something, you know what I mean? Like those real heavy, firing emotional responses and firings in the body when it's just become this inflammatory response. Do you have a really practical tip around that?
I do. Feel your feelings. It is one of the most common things I see. The amount of suppression, the amount of resilience we force upon ourselves, how strong we need to be, and we need to hide. When something is going down and you are having, let's be clear, we're humans and we have human experiences. Feel it. Don't fear the feelings. Don't avoid the feelings and hide from the feelings, because that's a lot of the students and clients I get to help. It's like, no, something goes down, be in it. Scream, cry, punch a pillow, snot bubble, position on the floor, whatever you need to do, because without doing that, we're betraying ourselves again, and we're in suppression, which is emotional and energetic ingestion. Don't judge your stuff down and not honor yourself. Whatever goes on, feel it, because in the feeling of the feelings, you process, you feel better, you move through it, you see with a clearer view, you drop deeper into that part of yourself that we all so desperately need more of, right? And that connection to ourselves. So feel your feelings.
Feel your feelings. And I remember you and I talking about when we talked together in Phoenix about the box breathing and the breath.
Yes.
And
yes. Breathe on purpose.
Breathing intentionally, with the intent, I would say, to feel it, right? Not to overpass or bypass it. No.
Well, I think also it depends on, it's the crux of this is growing to your next level of self-awareness, right? Because when you're in self-awareness and you are connected to yourself, you actually can answer the question, what do I need right now? And the answer might be, let it up and out, feel your feelings. In a different circumstance or stimulus, the answer might be, pause, do some deep breathing, connect to yourself, right? But if you're not quiet enough to establish the relationship with yourself, you will not be able to guide yourself. And you're the one with the answers. I don't have the answers. Sheree doesn't have the answers. You have the answers.
Right. And I can't go in and move your body. Wouldn't you say that's another big thing is the movement?
That's another answer. You might have, I need to move my body. I need to go into nature. I need to use my voice. I need to sit in silence. I need to be gentler with myself.
All those things make profound. I mean, I think the avoidance of them is on some level, we know that we're going to be addressing the feeling that we've been avoiding. And we know if we do these things, it'll hit it. Because the body always wants to go into fight or flight, right? But I think the crux of this thing is choosing that self-honor. Like you said, either you choose, you make the choice. I can't remember how you said it, that there's a catalyst involved. Change by choice or catalyst.
You change by catalyst or by choice. Yep, exactly.
So I think let's just wrap it up there with, it really is a choice. The choice is to show up for you. The choice is to make you first. And pulling out every stop you have, every tool you have, every resource you have, with that being your ultimate goal. Because when you choose that, don't you feel like everything else will just line up in your life pretty much? I mean, not perfectly, but things tend to align when you put yourself first.
Yes. It's the gateway, key to the kingdom, whatever word you want to use. All of your perceived problems and quote symptoms start to dissipate when you deal with the root source, which is you, where you heal the wounds that you've ignored, where you feel the feelings that you've suppressed, where you use the voice that you've censored. This is how we start to become the fullest expression of ourselves. And that's what we do so that we get to the end of our lives, because we're all going to get there. I think the only profound truth there is no one gets out alive.
Yeah.
And if you can use that and go, wait a second, on that day, which will happen, will I have turned around and lived my fullest expression of myself, allowed myself to do the tough stuff, failed and succeeded, et cetera, or will I, in that moment, look back and go, shit, I didn't.
Yeah.
I lived everybody else's shoulds, wants, ideals, and it's over.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
What do you want? Which one do you want to be?
Powerful stuff. Well, Tracy, I think we could throw the bomb down there and just say that was thank you so much. And tell people how they can find you in case they can't read the show notes and what offerings you're about at the moment.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I so loved this time with you. It was amazing. So you guys can find me. My name is Tracy Litt, Litt, and my company is called The Litt Factor, Litt. So it's my website is The Litt Factor, and all of my social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, et cetera, is all The Litt Factor. So you can search me that way. And I would love to put out an extension and invitation. I am having a 3-day, 2-night magnificent deep dive personal growth event in mid-January in Palm Beach, Florida at the Palm Beach 5-star resort. And it's going to be 3 days of being in person with me, doing the work, healing the wounds, changing the way you think, and making powerful decisions for 2020 and teaching you how to embody that woman. And it's going to be extraordinary. So I would love to have you there, and you can get info about it on my website at thelittfactor.com.
And that's with 2 T's, The Litt Factor.
Yes, it is.
Awesome. And of course, they can find your book, Worthy Human, on Amazon. And I've got a link to that in the show notes as well. But it's pretty easy to find on Amazon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's the only one, Worthy Human, because you're the problem and the solution. And there's the audiobook there too, which I did record myself. So if you like the sound of my voice, you can listen to me talk.
Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. And thanks for the ways you're showing up in the world. It's really inspiring.
Thank you so much for having me. I adored you from the second I met you, and I've so enjoyed this.
Same. Have a good one. Wow, this has to be one of my all-time favorite conversations because we just really got to the core and essence of how to create in your life, and that's through choosing self-honor. And I would encourage you to really look at what you want. It's okay to want what you want. If you want to create a life that's stellar, the dreams of your heart, the things that you've always desired and wanted, really what we're searching for is a feeling. So it's actually feelings you're searching for, but get clear on those. And if you need some guidance around getting clear on those, my Stand, Speak, Shine School, we really dive into that. We talk about your archetypes. We talk about how you can feel more radiant and look more radiant, how you can manage your energy, how you can cultivate relationships and get in more of an abundant mindset. We talk about how you can show up in a space of using your soul voice, not censoring yourself, letting yourself express. These are all things I'm very, very passionate about. And the Stand, Speak, Shine School will walk and guide you through that process. And it's super, super exciting to me. So yeah, go check that out at standspeakshine.com. And definitely check out Tracy Litt's book, Worthy Human. I found it to be such a practical tool and an easy read, but powerful, powerful stuff and so well written. We'll talk to you next week as we head further and further into the holidays. Another opportunity to preciously choose you.